I'm upset about the boys.
But with 3 keys, are you transporting for Terry and Meech?
You're my lawyer. I'm here to help.
We ain't flush right now, but we need the cops.
In God we trust or bust.
This the ATL. Ain't nothing free.
I believe in myself. And I believe in us.
Now imagine a scenario where we had no clue what the backstory was of Meech and Terry. We'd be looking at this situation thinking, how on earth is it possible for them to rebuild after going on the run from law enforcement and Lamar? They're going to be in a new city with no money, no product, no soldiers, or infrastructure like they had in Detroit, and therefore, the title of episode 5, Moment of Truth, is quite fitting for the scenario they both find themselves in. It really is the moment of truth. How will they make it work in Atlanta? Now we all know they will, but it's not going to be as straightforward because they've run from many threats in Detroit. New threats will emerge because they're stepping into an unknown territory. So we're going to run through all things episode 5 in this trailer breakdown and how Meech and Terry will come across Goldie and set up their organization in Atlanta. Now the title for season 2 episode 5 is Moment of Truth, and the synopsis reads, on the run, broke, and in search for a new plug, Meech and Terry discover the Black Mecca of Atlanta, where they connect with old friends and make new allies in an effort to rebuild their business during the drug drought. Now the rebuild that's on the hands for Meech and Terry is huge. At the end of episode 4, we saw them barely making it out of Detroit. Denise is in custody, which we're going to come to in just a moment, but with Lamar on their tail, they managed to escape, and we're going to see them enter Atlanta where the real-life Meech and Terry escaped to after Meech was shot by the real-life Lamar. But it's not just an issue for Meech and Terry. Lucille and Charles have been having constant arguments which date back to season 1, and to take their minds off things, Lucille wants them to go on a church retreat, something Charles isn't too fond of. Now not only are they worried about their kids, but their marriage is showing extreme cracks, and their business will be under severe threat. Terry was the driving force behind their car ride service, who was able to bring this youthful energy and fresh ideas, and we all saw how he made it work through the airport pickups. But his latest plan in episode 4 definitely backfired. He had a hidden compartment in Denise's car, and he asked her to drive to Lansing to deliver some product. This was intercepted by Detective Brian and Jin, who found the hidden compartment, and I wouldn't be surprised if B. Mickey sabotaged this compartment on purpose. He's a character who's not had much luck, whether it be with Kato or the BMF. We all saw his face when Terry took charge. It hurt, because he was supposed to be Meech's right-hand man, which is quite ironic considering he knows he's a snitch. But regardless who was in charge while Meech was out, they was always facing an uphill battle to put things back together during this drug drought. It was a tough time for any crew on the street, and that's why Meech had told Terry to go back to Pat, something he ignored. So the snowball effect ended up with Denise in handcuffs, and we're gonna pick up episode 5 with Denise still in custody. And Detective Brian thinks he can break Denise, and why not? She's not in the game, and she also has a son that she needs to think about, so it's easy to see why she could talk and give Meech or Terry's name. We hear Detective Brian questioning Denise, is she transporting for Terry and Meech? Now we don't know what's said in the aftermath of this conversation, but could Monique save the day? Earlier in the season, Meech made reference to how Monique was one of the best paralegals, and so we know she works in law. So it is safe to assume Meech may have made the call to Monique to go and help Denise and advise her to keep quiet. Monique tells her she's here to help, but what happens when she's looking at time? After all, Detective Brian and Jin aren't interested in small fish. He made that clear in their bust earlier in the season. He wants Meech and Terry, and he really is going to stop at nothing to try and get them, even if they have fled to Atlanta. This is where I think we need to bring in B. Mickey back into the fold. Detective Brian has been putting extreme pressure on B throughout this first half of season 2, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see yet another meeting between Brian and B. Mickey. But what he can give them now that Terry and Meech are gone, let's wait and see. Now as Meech and Terry try and establish themselves in Atlanta, they know they ain't flush, but they're here to make a mark, and if we've learned one thing about Meech throughout the first 2 seasons, it's that he believes in himself, and that's what he tells Terry. But just like Charles said at the end of episode 4, they're gonna have to stick together, especially as they rebuild, because there will be new roadblocks and threats. Now one way they're gonna try and assert themselves in Atlanta is through linking up with Goldie, played by Monique. Now her character description gives us an insight into what we can expect. She's a sophisticated Atlanta strip club owner with swagger and street smarts. She forms an alliance with the Flannery brothers to help fuel their migration from Detroit to Atlanta, a fierce protector of her dancers and people in her world. Goldie isn't afraid to take care of business, no matter what the cost. Now Monique did expand on her character and she said, Goldie is a sister of that community, but where the community loves her, the church folks hate. she had her Aunt Vera, and anything you thought you needed, my Aunt Vera could give it to you and get it for you. That's who Goldie is. Some people that looked at that and said, oh my goodness, look at this villain. And there are some people that looked at that and said, look at this hero. She's a straight gangster for her people. On her relationship with Meech, Big Meech and Goldie develop a relationship that's very nurturing, both ways. Goldie sees strength, she sees the beauty, she sees the vulnerability and the insecurity. She sees all of this in a young man, but she also sees two kings. So Goldie is a character who's going to play a pivotal role in the Flannery brothers' move from Detroit to Atlanta, but she does warn Meech, nothing comes for free, and there still is a drug drought. But as Monique teased, she sees the potential in Meech. She knows he's got a huge potential to be a king, and so who wouldn't want someone like Meech moving weight for them? But again, it is hard to start from scratch with no money, no product, and no resources, but this is where Flamel could possibly come in. Flamel was a second in command to JMO for the 12th Street Boys, and we were introduced to him in the very first episode of Season 1. He was someone who was shrewd and business smart, and if he was in charge, maybe he would have taken Meech up on his offer at the beginning of Season 1. He was also a character who didn't trust Lamar, which is why Lamar knew he had to get rid of him to take control over the 12th Street, and that's what he did. Lamar beat him to an inch of death, where he then lied in hospital with a broken arm and leg, where Lamar returned to threaten to kill him, which forced him to leave town, and even to the point where he peed himself.
Friends do a lot of things, but a sponge bath ain't one of them.
But this is the return of Flamel, and it looks like he may even form an alliance with Meech and Terry, because there won't be too many familiar faces in Atlanta, so they'll need all the help they can get, and Flamel can help them on the right path. Now elsewhere, now that Terry and Meech have left Detroit, it leaves their crew and the BMF somewhat vulnerable and in a bit of a predicament. But with Meech and Terry no longer in the picture, and B Mickey not the strongest of leaders, could Lamar use this as an opportunity to assert his dominance in Detroit? And if he does, who does he go to for product? I would love to see Lamar working with K9, because that's a guarantee to be an explosive partnership, but one which could end badly for one or the other, with Detective Brian and Jin. Where does the investigation go if Monique is able to work her magic and stops Denise from talking? They won't stop chasing Meech, and B Mickey may still yet to prove a pivotal role for Detective Brian, because if he can't get what he wants from Denise, then you can sure he's going to be back to put pressure on B. I'm also intrigued to see where the story of Marquisha and Terry goes from here, especially considering Terry took 3 keys from Boom, which let's not forget, was taken by Brian. Like they say, you can try and run from the game, but mistakes and past actions will always have a way of catching up. But that's a breakdown of Season 2 Episode 5 trailer, an episode where the stakes are going to be even higher, especially as Terry and Meech try and establish themselves in Atlanta while trying to cover their tracks back home. So with that being said, drop all your thoughts and theories down below for all things Episode 5. How do you guys think Meech and Terry will rebuild? And what's next for Lamar? Drop all your thoughts down below on all things Episode 5 for BMF Season 2. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything BMF and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.